Welcome to Evolvepreneur Podcast Channel. My very special guest today is Jeroen Corthout, which I'm sure I probably did it wrong, but we'll see how we go. He's actually the co-founder and CEO of Salesflare. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Pronunciation was not too bad.
Not too bad, right? Okay, there you go. I had a little bit of a practice pre-show, so we're getting there. So I just got to dig into your bio a little bit. So you've set up a company called Salesflare, which is an intelligent CRM built for the SMB market, so the small business market, mostly popular with agencies and fast-growing startup companies. Salesflare itself was founded by you and Lieven. Is it Lieven?
Lieven, yeah.
Very good. Here we go. We're working well here. Well, wanted to follow up because they wanted to follow up for leads to their software company in an easier way. You don't tell me about that. And didn't keep track of their leads manually, so they built Salesflare, which pulls customer data together automatically, then actively helps you follow them up. It's now one of the most popular CRM on the product hunt and top rated on review platforms like G2, and it's ease of use and automation features. So, okay, cool. So, CRM's kind of one of my sort of bug bites as well, because what I find is a lot of people don't implement CRM when they probably should. And I guess that's what's happened to you. You've sort of got to a point where you can't grow without, some sort of structure, right?
Yeah, I think there's it's one general issue is where people they don't implement them while they should, but that's probably partly because they see other people or they have experience with implementing it and it not going well. Is this whole fear of putting in a lot of work and nothing coming back, having this kind of implementation failure where you put some stuff in place but nobody uses it in the end.
Procedures, right? Get people to write out SOPs or procedures, right? They never follow them anyway.
Yeah, but I personally have an experience, and I'm in a previous life I was a consultant, mainly for the pharma industry, and we did a lot of deployments, implementations of CRMs within a larger context. And internally, we also use it, and anyway, there and in other places, I always saw that CRM was a big issue. It's like I don't know how to say, a keystone. It's really something that you need to put in place because it makes so many other things work, but hardly ever does it work, which then makes that all these other things don't work. So.
And I think the biggest problem I found I think we're implementing any software for that matter, but when you got something like CRM, you've got so many people involved in that between, just not just the sales guys necessarily, but if the entire company's not involved in using it, then the information isn't relied on. And what I found was if you didn't rely on the information, it would never work. If you actually have a CRM, I'll key it in later, I'll double key it, I'll run this on a spreadsheet and I'll copy it in later. They never do it. So you end up in a situation where it just becomes just another problem for them to follow up on, and they never use it properly, and therefore they say, oh, it's not worth it to me because I'm not doing it. But the reality is not relying on it.
Yeah, definitely. It needs to be something you use for some purpose, not a management reporting tool or something. Then it'll never really work, because if it's a tool with which you report stuff to management, then you're only going to put in what you want to report to management and not all the other things. Like, for instance, in that consultancy company where I used to work, I was an account manager, and I would input my deals because that was important, right? Like management could see what's Jeroen going to sell and what are the others going to sell, and I would compare. I would look at the others' pipelines and be like, oh my God, I need to do my best a bit more, I would put that in, and then I would put in contacts to put on the newsletter, because they found that important that people would get our newsletter. But what happened in the end is that I actually started inputting the deals way later. So not even the bare minimum, because one of my colleagues said that if I would input it too quickly, then management was going to start to expect stuff. So it was better not to do that and to only put it in when I was sort of sure that it was going to fall.
So your conversion rates show better too. It's almost your engineering.
Definitely, yeah. Great salesperson. Doesn't create a lot of leads, but when he has them, boom.
Yeah. He converts, right? Yeah. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? Because it's CRM to me is all about timing. right? So it's all about getting it right at the right time. And I think if you don't use it as it like build the data on someone, if you're trying to key it in later, then you miss out on a lot of important things you could have got at the start, as opposed to tracking them back later and say, what was your birthday again? Because we kind of need this for something else, and you end up it becomes annoying to that customer then because you didn't get it when you should have.
Yeah, no, that's true. If it doesn't happen within the flow, it's never gonna happen. And actually, in another way, it's also important for timing, because what most of our customers, if you would ask them like, what is the essential thing you use Salesflare for as a CRM, it's to follow up leads with the right timing, with the right backgrounds, knowing what you've discussed previously, all this kind of stuff, knowing where they are. Timing is really crucial there as well.
So do you find a lot of people sort of like get the pretty shiny syndrome with CRM and try and do too much too soon? Like rather than kind of set yourself up for little wins along the way, they kind of just drop it on them and try to get it, try to do too much?
Yeah, in a way. I think the issue there is that people know they need a CRM, but they don't take the 5 minutes to figure out what they really need it for, what's the essential thing they want to solve now. So they're like, okay, we need something, and it's good if it does a lot of stuff. And then you just pick something off the shelf, you don't even try it or so, and then you're just like, we have a CRM, and you tell the team, use it. That's the general approach, which doesn't really work, of course. There is like, I think if you go on g2.com, there's more than 650 CRMs out there.
Yes,
many of them have a slightly different sort of angle to them. And if you don't figure out which angle you need, then that's already the first mistake in a large series of mistakes you'll make when implementing CRM.
So is it better, like, and I'm guessing your CRM does this, but in what I've always done is I've always had like a form or something that happens on the website, automatically puts it into the CRM at the start point. So you're building your information as it comes through. It's automatically happening. And I think we've mentioned a few things on the thing about, automation. So talk a little bit about that, because I think that's what people sort of think, oh, well, I'll key it in when I've got to the point where I need to key it in. But the reality is that, you want to be collecting that data a lot earlier than that, right?
Yeah, there's I think that's one of the main ways people get data in their CRM. It's indeed forms on the site, and then have that pushed into the CRM. So from there, it's assigned somewhere there's an opportunity, and you can start following up. Maybe you even have a task ready for you to like follow that person up. Maybe there's a little thing in the timeline which says they filled out a form here. All these kind of things are possible. It's one way in which data comes in the CRM. Another way is people doing outreach. And at the moment that someone is interested, while they're in their inbox, putting that person into the CRM. There's two approaches there. Some people put everyone they do outreach towards in the CRM, and some people just the ones that are interested. And then a third one is probably where a lot of people also have good business from referrals. It's like when someone else refers you, usually also through your inbox, and then you create that customer at that point. So
basically do it via their email box, essentially, so they can just sort of populate it.
A lot of it happens in the email inbox, and we created a sidebar for that, so you one click from the inbox.
Nice, yeah, because I mean that's the thing. Getting people's email addresses wrong is usually the first thing people get in that process. Like suddenly they're sending emails to an address that doesn't exist because they made it key. At least if they've sent you an email, chances are it's correct, right?
Yeah, no, it's actually cannot be incorrect. If they sent you an email from a certain email address, then there's no possibility that it's an incorrect email address.
It's going to get it wrong. So what do you think that the best, like let's say like a small business operator that's probably only got a couple of staff, what do you think the best thing is for a CRM to implement a CRM? What's the best gain they're going to get out of that, other than keeping contacts and stuff like that? What do you think they should be aiming for in that situation, their first kind of win, if you like?
Yeah. Again, it depends a bit on what they need a CRM for. So there's like, let's say there's e-commerce businesses they probably want to keep track of stock to a certain extent, which then already brings it a bit outside CRM. They want to keep track of repeat buys, try to stimulate that, all these kind of things. So they need some kind of e-commerce CRM. Then there's some other people who want to build a sort of list of people they can nurture to sell services. They don't sell their services very often. They mostly need to stay top of mind with a lot of people. They need some sort of email marketing CRM type thing. The type of customers and that is real estate, very specific also. It's like you keep a bunch of people up to date often on new stuff, and then it's also a two-sided thing, like where you sell to on the one end to the owners, and on the other end to people who are going to buy the houses or whatever it is your broker.
So pulling the two. Yeah.
But the type of customers we serve is small and medium-sized businesses who sell B2B, and they're in B2B sales. The number one thing for which people want a CRM is to follow up their leads better. So that's what they're going to be looking for. So then typically they need something that is called a sales CRM. Generally, at least that's one of the terms for it. And then within that context, some of the things that, apart from following up the leads, which is very much what the sales team, the actual salespeople use the CRM for. On one level above, the sales manager, he likes to be able to coach, or she likes to be able to coach these salespeople. And if you have no idea what they're doing in any system or so, you need to, what people typically do is have these pipeline meetings in, where they try to get the information out of the salesperson at that moment, like what's in the pipeline, and then go through these things and then define next steps and all. It's a way of trying to coach, but it's very much like, we have no information, let's get the information now and then give you some advice kind of thing. It's better if the information is already there, right?
Yeah.
Then another huge issue that these people need to solve is people becoming sick or even leaving. If somebody leaves and they've never kept track of who they were in touch with, about what, when, all these kind of things, what they sold, maybe even, then, well, good luck to you when it comes to restarting these relationships, because you almost have to start from zero.
I think one of the biggest bugbears I've ever seen that drives me absolutely insane is when someone leaves a company, they delete the email and you get a bounce back. To me, that drives me insane, because I think to myself, well, if you're going to have personal email addresses going out to people, which I hate too, I think you should sort of centralize that. But if you're going to have that type of thing, then redirect the email. Don't just delete it, and then you've lost that relationship with that company, and the first thing you think is you've gone broke or something. You're not going to try and chase them up. I had one the other day, like a printing company. I sent an email, bounce back. It's like, okay, I start to have to go looking, thinking, are they gone broke? Are they still around? Where's their website? All those questions then come up because they simply just didn't think, just redirect that email address. Don't just...
I think the companies like Google and Microsoft could also make that easier. Because I think when somebody leaves and you have, for instance, Google Workspace, you disable that user and emails can still arrive and stuff. And during that time, you could set up a redirect or so. But I think when you finally delete the user and stop paying for it, because while the user is disabled, you're still paying for it. I think it starts bouncing. So yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem. I think what people do in that situation, the same theory in CRM, right, is if you've got it all in one CRM, you can go back and you can see what's going on with that person and their interactions that happen. But if you've got it in an email box and that's what they've been managing that relationship with, you've now got a real difficult way of kind of figuring out what's going out. Because, I mean, I read emails I sent 2 years ago, I don't remember them at all. Like, I don't even remember. Like, what did I say back then? So the reality is trying to troll through someone's email box to try and figure out what they've done and what communications happened, and they might have deleted emails along the way as well. You've got that loss of situation, which makes you look bad when you're coming in on it.
Definitely. There's an enormous amount of information in the mailbox to go from.
Yeah, and basically, as people, if they're killing off their email addresses, they're probably killing off their storage as well. So it's probably the same kind of thing. So I think that for me, what I've always thought about was if you're implementing CRM, you're implementing it for a financial reason. If they can get a financial win out of it, then they're going to keep using it and they're going to keep working with it. As opposed to picking the pretty shiny features that don't really mean anything at the end of the day until they get good at it. So what's the best way in terms of what you think, like in terms of building up a company from scratch when you say you're looking at a CRM? Should you pull all your information in that you've already got? Should you start from scratch? How should you grow that business up?
If you have information, I would definitely move it in. Only after cleaning it up.
Mm-hmm.
Cleaning up is
dump the whole lot in, right? And then try and clean it up.
Yeah. It's like when you're moving houses, and you just take all your crap from one place to the other.
Yep.
It's sort of a missed opportunity there.
Yeah. Yes.
It's good to have a look at the things you're putting in boxes and be like, maybe I should keep this, maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Of course, when you're putting stuff in boxes, it's a bit more labor intensive than going in one system and saying export CSV, taking it in the other and putting it in.
Mm.
But still, I think in between, you should have a good look at what it is you want to keep, what it is you don't want to keep. And some data points might be not well kept. Let's say a lot of systems also allow you to do really weird things. Like some CRMs that people move data from, they allow you to put phone numbers in email address fields and the other way around. And then you get these really weird situations where we're trying to automate things based on that data, but it doesn't work. Because
another thing that I've sort of, when I was running a software IT business of support, is making some rules up about data entry, right? So that you say, well, this is the way that we key it in. This is the way it should look. And building that across the business. Otherwise, what happens, everybody has their own idea. So some people will write street and type it up. Some people will just put ST. And it might not seem like anything, but when you start printing things out or sending out stuff, suddenly it all looks like a mess, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's definitely one of the key steps. I mentioned one of them earlier is figuring out first what you need a CRM for. I think step number 2 is making sure that you involve your salespeople in choosing one, because they need to be involved. They need to also be able to pick what it is they think they're going to be using, because in the end, if they're not going to use it, everything else falls apart. And then step 3 is going beyond just a normal training where you explain all the features of the CRM. That's nice that they know what it can do. But there's also the aspect of you deciding together as a team how you're going to use it. And that goes into aspects like how are you going to enter the data, but also when you define, for instance, the sales process in the CRM, how are you going to follow it? How are you going to know that something advances from this stage to the other? What sort of information are you going to put on meetings? What sort of other information are you going to upload into it? All these kind of things it's good that you discuss them, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time, and it's going to save you an enormous amount of time in the long run. Because good data means that you can print nice labels, like you said. Yeah. It also means that it's much easier to collaborate. Because the data always looks the same way, you know what to expect. People can rely on it. They don't need to ask each other. They can just see it in the system. And processes can also flow properly. And that's just by, probably you don't need more than, let's say, a little document with 2 A4s or so, deciding like, okay, this is how we do this and that.
Yep.
But then it's set, and sometimes you revise it. But you have a way of working as a team, which is extremely important.
Yeah, because the one that used to drive me insane was all caps. So they just key the whole record in all capital letters.
Yeah, that's something that French people are really like doing. It's like they put the last name in all caps or something, I think.
Oh, right.
And they also like to have the last name before the first name. So we sometimes have French customers who say, man, can we have these last names before these first names, and then all caps? And they even start tricking the system where they put the first name in the last name field and stuff.
No. So, I mean, so dear last name, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing that I always reckon that people don't do with CRMs and even autoresponders and stuff like that is they never test it. Like they never test the emails and they're on themselves, right? And the amount of times I get an email that says, "Dear contact name,"
Yeah.
right? And it's because they never tested it on themselves. And I think one of the things that I always done in all the systems I've ever set up is I actually become my own customer. And I actually put myself like a customer so that if something accidentally happens in the system, I'll know about it because I'm a customer. Whereas I think a lot of people don't do that. They just don't assume that they are their own customer. So there's no real way of knowing what's going on in the real world.
Yeah. Well, we have this kind of emailing thing in the system, and there's obviously a button that says send test email, with which you can send a test email to yourself, and then see it all with all the fields filled out. Like if you do this kind of merge into the email, that you see that everything works properly.
And I think that most people don't do that. And so it's like a single piece of advice I could ever give to someone when they're doing emails is test the email before they send it every single time. Not just...
I'm someone who's not very super careful with this kind of stuff, but every time I send out an email, I think about my colleagues in the company where I used to work. And there were these ladies that would send out the emails, and they would always be super nervous when they send out one. Then I think I should also be more nervous like that, and then I go back and send a test email first.
There used to be a saying when the computers first come out, to really stuff up you need a computer. Because you could send out, like, you can do a mail or something, you could spot that it was a problem on the way through, right? But as soon as you hit that send button, you could be sending thousands of emails and you wouldn't know, and it's too late to stop it, right? It's already gone.
Right.
Yeah. So, talking about automation, what do you think's in terms of automation, in terms of CRM, what do you think is the key things that people should be trying to do? And do you what's your feelings on trying to fake automation or being upfront about it and saying that it's automation? It's like, what's your feelings on the subject?
I'll start with the first question. So in terms of automation, I think it all starts from trying to automate your data first, and some of the flows, like you said, like you have a form and it coming to the CRM automatically. Without you having to, you have a lot of customers who come on the software who initially they have this form and it comes to their mailbox, and then from the mailbox they start copying the fields one by one into their CRM, which I think doesn't make a lot of sense. But what we focus on very much.
So go looking for opportunities to streamline that data entry if you're spending time on it, I guess.
Oh yeah, you're spending time on stupid things, like a computer could take care of that, and instead you play this sort of connection between two computer programs, let's say, which doesn't make sense. I mean, there's really good software like Zapier out there with which you can map, I think, 3,000 apps already at the moment in a sort of if this then that fashion. We run most of our company on that, and we don't have to spend any time on stupid administration. It just happens in the background, 24/7 for us.
It'll always tell you if there's a problem, right? You always get an email where it'll say, "Hey, this didn't work." So at least it's almost like an employee hardly ever tells you you made a mistake, right? But that happens all the time, right?
Yeah, and then you can look into it and you can say, "Oh, this doesn't work," and then you fix it, and it works again from then on. So great.
Yeah.
But what we focus on mostly in terms of automation at Salesflare is helping with the data input, because it all starts from there. Connecting different systems, so integrating the information from the email system, getting contacts out of there with their email signatures and names and email addresses, and getting some information from social media, getting some information from company databases, collecting contacts with companies, getting information from the calendar with the meetings and all the information that's linked to that, integrating email tracking and website tracking, getting the calls from your phone if you have an Android phone, because there it's possible to integrate the call history as well. And then automating all that, because it all starts from there, right? If you don't have the data, it's very hard to automate other stuff. You cannot send, for instance, automated emails if you don't have the person's email address and name, and this is probably the bare
minimum. So on that subject, actually, it's interesting. What I've seen a bit of a trend to to some people is they collect their email address and they collect nothing else. And there's almost that there's never a dear or hi or whatever in their emails because they don't know that information. And their theory is that everybody's used to that anyway, so they know it's automated. They know that is being done by the machine, so why bother with it? So just collect their email address and don't collect their name. It drives me insane. I reckon it's crazy because if you want to collect, if you can get someone's name and their email address, it's a damn good start to the relationship, because if you don't know their name, you're in big trouble, right?
Yeah, but the name is usually in the email address, or
Sometimes.
or you can get it from somewhere else. There's all kinds of tricks to, when you have an email address, find a person's name. But yes, it's annoying. We've built in some stuff like if you send an email that you can have a fallback. So for instance, you do hi John. As a fallback, you do there, and then it's hi there.
Yep.
Or
to avoid, I think that's some tricks. That what I've always done is I never put a comma after their name, so I don't say hi John, comma.
Yeah.
Right. And I see that a lot where people forget. Yeah. So it's like don't put the comma in, because then it's obvious that you made a mistake, right? So hi comma.
Yeah.
Right. Just little things like that to sort of think about how it's going to come at the other end, because, and I guess that comes back to testing too, like to make sure you actually did test it on yourself.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Then you had a question about
whether you should fake automation or whether you should be upfront about it. Like, and I guess it depends on the customer and what you're doing, but
I think it depends. Yeah, if people are likely to think that it's you who sent it. I mean, sometimes you need to be able to do things at a slightly more, like a larger scale. Like it's not because you're not manually inputting the 500 emails you're sending, like copy paste send to the right person next, that you have
to different to a computer doing it, by the way. I don't know why people get upset about that, but anyway, it's no different to a computer. Just a computer anyway, you're just doing it for instead of the computer.
And I mean, a lot of these tools actually replace that kind of I had a call with someone who was last year, and he was explaining me his process, like how he would get a list and then start emailing them one by one through Outlook. And he said, well, yesterday I did 80. And then today I'm doing 80. And then maybe next week I start following them up. Then he would go in the send box and then one by one send reply like, hey, you didn't reply yet. I said, well, maybe you could use software for that. You don't have to spend your days in your mailbox.
Seriously, this day and age, I still think that's a good idea.
Yeah. It was a slightly older person, of course.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the problem is education, right? But I often wonder whether people now get they're so used to the idea that they see an email come through, they doubt whether it's really been sent by that person. And I see a lot of businesses now, what they do is they send the email from the email address is actually from that person. So it's it's John at rather than sales at. And I think that helps that relationship a lot, because if it kind of looks like it's been sent from a personal email address, not only the fact that spam blockers aren't as lethal on that, I think it's a better look, because it looks like you're sending it from at least selling from a real account rather than some sort of generic sales account.
I think people nowadays are assuming already that an email they get is automated, because the vast majority of the stuff you get in your inbox is automated. There's only sometimes there's a personal email in there, and then you're like, oh my god, somebody sent me an email. So I think what they're more likely to scan for is, are they trying to sell me something I don't want? And people are very quick at scanning for this. Probably less than a second, and they know. So it's very important to not be salesy, to keep it short and to the point, to immediately make clear what's in it for them, in some way, to make a very low barrier when you're, in terms of what you're asking for. For instance, don't ask like, let's jump on a call. Nobody wants to jump on a call.
No, it's work, right? That's work. Yeah.
And your question was in terms of like, do you acknowledge that it's automated
Yeah, I mean,
versus?
should you know, like, I think you can have fun with it. Like, I think I've seen some companies, even some of these big companies, have a bit of fun with automation. They don't just they actually say, hey, this is an automated robot kind of thing. It's like you're actually acknowledging it rather than trying to hide it. And also at the same, it's almost like I remember a guy that I sent an email to, and he says, when he puts his holiday reminder on, what he does is you send an email to him, and it comes back with an autoresponder and says, hey, you know, Ed's away right now. You know, you just reply back, and you've got one email, and after that I'll delete them. Right. So basically, if you want to tell Ed anything while he was away, then I'll look after it for you. But you've got one email, and that's it. I'm going to delete it. I seriously doubt he can actually do that. I don't think he's got the tech to do it. But it kind of makes it a bit of fun, because what's happened now is that you've actually read it, because it sounded like it wasn't automated, and then you realise it was, because he said he was a robot. But it kind of put them back a bit of fun into it, if you like. You know, made it say, make sure that you write back something viable, because we're just going to delete it otherwise.
Yeah, I used to have this kind of a automation running somewhere. I think it was on Twitter or something, and it would say that it was Jeroen's robot. I don't remember exactly what it asked for. It's been years now. I don't do a lot of this automation anymore. At some point, it would ask for pizza flavors, but favorite pizza flavor. It was very stupid. But in our onboarding, for instance, if you get on Salesflare, we have lots of automated emails that we try to have them relevant, not just generic automated emails, but and we've chosen to do part of those very clearly show that they're automated, like they come from Team Salesflare, and they do say hi, first name, and all that, but it's clearly not personal. It's just a computer system helping you based on what you've been doing already. To do it better. And then another sort of type of emails we have and chat messages also, those look personal. They come from a person who's doing customer support and sales, Taylor, and there we try to make a connection, and it's not there that it's not her sending it, but it's an automated attempt by her, you could say, to get in touch, because it doesn't make sense to do that manually. Like every time somebody signs up, like, hey, I'm Taylor, I'm your customer manager,
And it will look automated anyway, because how different you get. I mean, you can't really make it look much different that you typed it than you actually copied it, right? It's not automated. I mean, it's
the only thing you could do, and I appreciate that to a certain extent, but I don't think it's really a game changer in many cases, is when people have a look at your site and then say, oh, I really like what you're doing there, and with CRM and all, or whatever. I think it's nice if you're really personalizing something meaningfully, but if it's just to add a personal flavor to it, that's probably not worth it. The time and effort, right?
This is actually interesting. When I was doing some networking functions, when you could actually, pre-pandemic, a while back now, even, where I'd go and meet someone at an event, and what I'd do is I'd scan their business card. So one of my automation processes was scan the business card, it dropped it straight into the database. And then when I went in there, I actually had some custom fields in there. So I actually put in there, I met you at whatever networking function, and I might have had a little piece of information about them, or how's the kids going, or something like that. And so when it sent the email out, it automatically put that into the email. And so that way it was personal, but it wasn't something that the machine had to make up. It's something I had to manually do. And it made it a lot nicer, because it made it look different, like it was personalised. Hey, I'm sending you a personal email, and I met you at. So it's pretty hard for them to guess that you automated that. Sounds like you wrote it.
Yeah. We do a similar thing when we meet people at conferences. We also have a business card scanner in the software. You scan the business card, gets all the stuff. You say, you add a little tag. You can say it was this conference, and then based on that, you can have an automated email set up that then sends during the conference already, like, hey, we just met each other, blah, blah, blah. But then also after that, if they don't reply, it can send another one after the conference and another one, which are things you're quite unlikely to do, because after a conference you're usually dead.
Yes.
So So
That's the hard
the
part.
computer keeps doing it.
And by the time they've got home, they've forgotten all about you. So almost like by the time that trip has wiped everything off of your brain.
Yeah, and what some people then do is they collect your business card, and then they send this very clearly automated email, like where they don't even personalize the first name or so, a week after the conference, in an attempt to do something with all the data they gathered, but it usually comes up in such a way that you're like, and you immediately click the archive or delete button.
Yeah, and you've lost them. So one thing that was interesting here, I noticed on your list, you said how to simplify and gamify your products onboarding. What do you mean by that? Like, what's that kind of concept? Because gamifying obviously works really well, I think, Yeah.
I don't have the book here behind me, but I read this really cool book. I even forgot the name of it. I can find it back. You maybe put it in the show notes.
Sure.
It's a book about how to create a good game, but it's really nice to apply to other stuff as well, like software, because in the end, it's not very different. It's maybe not as fun as a game, but apart from that, it's also sort of an experience you create, so it has the same aspects. But at some point, we were looking on how to make it, like how to incentivize people actually to get set up better with a CRM, because we've seen that it very much defines their success. It defines their success in terms of how well they're going to use the system. For us, it's very important because it also defines how long they're going to stay with us.
Yeah.
The more data also defines.
The more data goes in, the more chance they're going to stay the longer, right?
Yeah. It's not just about data. It's if you use it correctly, you're going to see the benefits. You're going to some customers report, for instance, that they make way more sales because they follow up better. It sounds kind of basic, but it's a big thing if you make $1 million more a year, for instance, just by following up a bit better with the system.
Well, theory is 8 follow-ups to make a sale, right? So nobody ever hangs in there that long.
Yeah, and definitely not if you don't have a system to do that. If you do that all based on your brain, and you have like tens of leads or maybe hundreds, it's not going to work. So what was I explaining? Gamifying and onboarding. Yeah. So because the onboarding is so important, it defines the long-term success. Even in the onboarding in the first 2 weeks, let's say, defines how well people are going to use the software in the next 2 years. It's order of things.
That doesn't mean to go on, right?
Yeah, and what we saw there is that it's very hard to incentivize people to set it up correctly. So we gamified that a bit. So when you come on the software now, it first does the walkthrough where it shows you how the software works and its value and stuff. But then after that, people often would say like, okay, this is all nice, but what's the next step? So after it happens, you get this little thing on the bottom which says, okay, you're in the software now. You've crossed off the first step, which is starting a trial. That's done.
Good.
And you get 7 days of trial with that. But if you do these other things, and there's like, I think 10 steps or so, with this step, you get 4 days extra on the trial. With this step, you get 2 days extra on the trial. This is 1, this is 3. And then people start doing that. Like, okay, install the email sidebar 1 day, invite some colleagues 4 days, Gotcha. And this guide, actually, when you click on it, it minimizes. So it's not in the way when you're doing other stuff. And there's always an article and a video if people wonder like, how do I do that? And that way, this guides people through the steps instead of them having to ask us like, do you have an article on the best steps to take when you get on the software? It just does that automatically. shows exactly how to do it. But most importantly, it incentivizes them with the days, and then when they actually do it, we have these notifications in the software. And let's say you and I are on the software together, and you complete one of these steps, then I get a notification that says, John just earned 4 days for the team by doing this or whatever.
Yeah. So peer pressure. Bit of peer pressure then. That's pretty cool. So, I mean, that's a great idea. I mean, I think in any business you can do that, right? So I think it's just think of sort of thinking about how you could actually add something of value to them as they're going through. So obviously, if anything else, they're probably saving the company money, right, by doing that. Because if they could have been paying, it's obviously it's not costing you money technically because they're not paying you, but at least in theory they're saving themselves some money. In that situation, yeah.
Yeah, just thinking through the experience, I think, on a constant basis, and thinking of like, how can we make this more human, more fun? That really helps. So
I just sort of wrap up. What's the best piece of advice that you can give anybody that wants to start a CRM? What should be the kind of, like, say, 3 steps they should do probably even before they start signing up? What do you think they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I'm gonna recap a bit of what I said earlier. Yeah, it's first finding out what you need a CRM for, then researching which one seems best fit for that. There's huge review sites and lots of posts out there or whatever. There's a lot of information. You just have to go through it. Don't just pick the first thing that appears in Google or so. Then with your team, the people are actually going to use it, go through some of these systems, then actually try to use these systems a little with them. Don't just look at the interface. Don't just be like, oh, this looks pretty, or this looks, that's not the point of it. The point is like, does it work the way you expect it to work? Do you see yourself working with it? And then when you've made a decision on what you're going to use, then, like I said earlier, it's not only important when it comes to training to understand what it does and what it can do. It's also how you're going to work with it as a team. And if you check off all these boxes, I think you're ahead of 99% of companies or something, because most don't really go through it in a very thought through way, and chances are extremely high that they fail with their CRM implementation. But with these really simple steps, you'll already get out way ahead.
I think so, and I think part of the problem is a lot of people kind of react to things. So they suddenly say, I need a CRM to do something, and they go do one thing and they haven't thought it through. And so suddenly it's not suitable for anything else, or it's been recommended by someone to go and do it, but they haven't done their own research. So I think at the end of the day, CRM's a bit like a house. You have to make sure you like it, because I think you're going to be there a long time, right? You spend a lot of time.
Yeah. No, that's a good point as well. Yeah, if people asking like, I need a CRM, what do you guys recommend? And then everybody just recommends what it is they used. But does that mean that they've done the research? No, it doesn't. So.
No, you just try to be lazy, so to speak. So the website's salesflare.com, so that's pretty easy to remember and type. And like I said, I think you said it's like a 7-day trial, and then you can keep on increasing the days by.
Yeah, it goes at least until 30 if you go through all the steps.
Nice, cool. So you at least basically get 30 days on you. So I really appreciate your time on CRM. I think it's a big subject, and I think it's probably the single biggest thing. A lot of people, I think, through a pandemic would have done a lot better if they had their decent CRM in the first place. I think trying to establish it after the event's harder, but at the end of the day, a lot of companies would have survived much better with knowing their customer.
That's true. We actually got quite some signups from companies who the pandemic came, and then they were like, okay, we have no idea what our sales pipeline is. Let's fix that now. But it would have been better if they did that before. Yeah.
Because you're going to scare the customer, right? Because suddenly, like, one of the worst things you can do with CRM is start blasting customers out all of a sudden, because now you've got this new shiny object and you're going to send it to people, and then they start unsubscribing en masse because they startled them, right? They weren't used to it. Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes a lot. I think the theory is I always reckon start with a CRM or any sort of marketing as you mean to go on. Don't have this initial kind of groundswell and then you can't sustain it. So you end up just scaring everybody off.
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. All right, well, so thanks so much for your time. And we'll put the links up in the show notes just in case. But really appreciate you coming and have a great day.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.